Good evening, everybody. As Nick Pennsylvania, I am here as I always am with my friend Brendan Bond, who, for the evening, I am going to try very hard to refer to only as Bond. How you doing this evening, Bond?
I am doing excellent, sir. How are you tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. We have a friend of ours. He reached out to me the other day, about a week ago, about a special topic, Pittsburgh-centric topic, and it's a really interesting one. He asked if we had ever talked about it, and I said, you know what? I think we mentioned it in passing with our conversation, one of our conversations with Dr. White, author of several books on regional folklore and stories, but we never really dove deep into it. The confusion lies in, though, that his name is also Brendan. So we have Bond, who you know and love, and we have our good friend Brendan. This is his first time being here, but I know Brendan for the better part of 20 years now, which is kind of upsetting in and of itself because it's been such a long time since we
Scary.
really sat down. It is scary. How are you, Brendan?
Doing great. I'm cold. I mean, it was a cold night.
Yeah.
It is a cold night, and the crazy thing is, we get accustomed to either we have a mild winter with like a really cold snap here in Western Pennsylvania. That's pretty standard for the last few years. This year has it's gone from one extreme to the other. I know on Sunday, prior to us recording, I was out on the deck with my wife and it was just shy of 60 degrees. The very next day, we had a low of 10 and 5 inches fell on us. And I believe on Tuesday, it's going to be up to around 60 again. That has been the story of this winter. So before we get into a couple things, just a couple quick things we wanted to talk about before getting into this mystery that Brendan brings to us. I have been cat sitting for some friends of mine that are in Europe. They're coming back tomorrow. And you know how I say, like, I always run up the stairs because I'm an imbecile?
Just in case. Yeah.
And the old Edgar Allan Poe line, like, I don't believe in ghosts, but I lived in fear of them all my life. Well, they have a cat. His name is Hey Hey. And they have like those buttons where there's all these different commands or statements. They like the cat can talk. I don't think the cat really knows what he's saying most of the time, but he does hit the treat button an awful lot. So maybe there's something to it. Have you seen these buttons that they'll press and it'll
I've
say
only
something?
seen them on like online. I've never actually seen them in person. So like it's hard to tell how effective they actually are, but it sounds like your experience has been the treat one works.
Well, and
I
they're
mean,
all
my,
in.
my wife really wants to get those for our dog. First of all, I don't believe that a cat can learn how to use buttons. But my wife really wants them for our dog, and you're supposed to not teach them the treat button for that exact reason, though.
Really? Huh.
Well, we have
Okay.
tried to do like the treat under the bell for our cats, and none of those dum dums can figure it out. But I've seen, and it sounds like a remix. Is like treat, 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 treat. But the other funny thing is, it's your voice that you're programming. So all of
Right.
these things are in our friend Katie's voice, which is hilarious of itself,
Right.
because that's not the voice I use when Hey Hey and I are talking. So one of the things I thought would be funny to do would be to reprogram using Elvis Costello's or James Brown's voice. I thought that would be great.
It's a great idea. Yeah.
But two funny things happened. One's a little spooky. One's just, and that's the one me being an idiot. All these buttons are in the kitchen, to the best of my knowledge. And the first day I walked in, Hey Hey was super pumped to see me. I was excited to see him. He wanted to show me how quickly he could weave around all the chair legs in the dining room, which was pretty cool. But then he ran to the kitchen, and I'm walking, following him, checking his water, and he pushes the button, and it says, Shadow Realm. And I say, I text Katie and I'm like, how worried should I be? And she doesn't get back to me right away, but apparently that is their code term for the basement. And
It's like it
that's where
makes
it's
sense. And like in the lore of their house,
right.
that
And
makes
that's
sense.
where
As
the
an
food,
outsider,
yeah.
that's yeah, I could
That's where the food is at. So we went down there and but yeah, that was funny. But then on uh on New Year's Eve, I went over there and I'm doing all this stuff. I'm hanging out with him, petting him. We spend at least 20 minutes every time we go there because he's needy. And I had done everything. I come up from the basement. I made sure to give him a little scoop. They got one of the automatic feeders. I put a little thing of food in there and he's
Hmm.
eating it. I go back upstairs. I'm gonna wait for him to come upstairs, say bye to the damn cat before I leave. You know, I'm sure he appreciates it. Anyway, all of a sudden I hear, hey, 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 hey. That's the cat's name.
Yeah.
And I am in the room with all of the buttons that I am aware of. I can hear him in the basement eating. I don't think there's any buttons in the basement. And
Yeah.
if he's eating, why would he be like slapping a button to tell me his name or something if
Right.
he understood? So like I'm like, you know what? I don't like this. I don't like this at all. So I scurry out of there without even saying
Yeah.
goodbye to the cat. I'm pretty sure I left a lamp on. And yeah, and I got out of there. And so when I went there today,
Did you
my wife
investigate?
came with me. No, I didn't investigate. I didn't see the
Well,
button
well,
anywhere,
but,
but
but did you find the button? Am I getting ahead of the thing?
there is a button in the kitchen, and M pushed it to
Yeah.
show me, like, and I'm like, I know that, but I wasn't standing on that button like a complete
Right.
idiot and couldn't tell where the noise was coming from. It sounded like it was coming from down in the basement, and that's why I was
Oh,
like,
I gotcha.
no, I don't like this
From the
at
shadow
all.
realm.
Right, from the
Right,
Shadow
the
Realm.
Shadow Realm. Like
Yeah.
nothing good happens in the Shadow Realm after 8 o'clock. So that's my
That's
story of me being an idiot. I definitely spooked myself out of there. I'm sure there's a very good explanation, but I'm going to demand it of Katie and Ben. M said, well, maybe when those buttons or batteries are going, they just start spouting off. Then why did it work this evening with that? So
seems
that's
yeah.
that.
I'm
Now,
curious to
yeah.
hear how that conversation goes.
I will let you know again. They get back from Europe sometime tomorrow, so I'm sure I'll see Katie and or Ben sometime next week. Now, before we get into this mystery, Brendan has some wild stuff for you. First off, this is hard to find. There was a very now, Bond, are you familiar with the amusement park Sandcastle?
Yeah, yeah.
What would you say was the most famous concert that ever happened at
Concert.
Sandcastle? Yeah.
Yeah, do you know that they had a Riverplex theater?
Like that does sound familiar. I feel like I remember hearing that advertising like B-94 back in the day.
John
Wow.
But
David,
I don't think
John David
I ever.
Botticelli.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't think I ever went to that though. So I'm honestly not sure.
Well, you missed out.
Yeah.
And again, this information was, I'm not going to be the one to break it, but the information was shared with me. And I said, like, who thought this was a good idea and what prison are they currently in? And apparently, Brendan, you have had like no success in finding any additional information about this incident.
There's no there's no information about this online at all. You can Google
Okay.
this band or this musician and the
Hmm.
Riverplex Theater of Sandcastle. You'll get nothing. I've gone
This
to
might be the greatest
great
mystery
lengths.
Pittsburgh ever.
Now, Nick, you said the biggest concert. The biggest concert at Sandcastle, I would say, is Meatloaf.
I'm so
Meatloaf
glad
played
you
at
have that information.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Now that's not where this is leading. I would even venture maybe to say the most medium-sized concert at Sandcastle was Guar. Guar played at Sandcastle, and the
Look at
only
that
thing that you
face.
could find is like 19. I think it was 1997. The only thing you
Yeah.
could find is a Post Gazette article. It might have even been the City Paper, rest in
Yeah.
peace,
And RIP. Yeah.
advertisement for it saying that the slides will run red
Oh my
this Sunday
God.
as Guar plays at Sandcastle. Can't find
Wow.
any pictures. You have no idea how much I'd like to see a picture of Guar playing at Sandcastle.
Sandcastle.
Just like little kids walking by.
Okay, we need to put like an official. We have multiple people I know that listen to this show that are musicians in Pittsburgh that have some connections. If any of you are listening, if anyone out there has that, please, please, please get it to us. That sounds
I believe it was June 2nd, 1997, the little thing you shared with me, Brendan.
Oh, I couldn't remember. Yeah, probably. That must be it.
wow. Can you imagine? In June,
No,
that's in June.
no.
That's like early summer too. Imagine having a Guar show at Sandcastle in June and then having the whole summer ahead of you still. That's insane.
Imagine going to Sandcastle, not knowing Guar was going to be playing there and having to
Oh
explain
my
that, or
God.
being a child
Right.
and like not quite
And
comprehending,
that's
like,
like that's like
Like
peak
these are not like
lineup.
the same animatronics they have at Chuck E. Cheese.
Right, and that's like peak lineup Guar too. That's like
Yeah,
prime. You said it was 97?
it was 97.
Yeah,
So they're
that's like
Jeez.
walking around
Jerry
the park
Springer
in
appearance
costume.
Guar.
Yeah. Oh my God. That's
Well,
that's the on a show that talks about crazy stuff pretty regularly. That's the craziest thing I've heard in a long time.
And you know what happened right beside where they played? I'm not. This is
Yeah,
not
no.
what happened right beside where they played. About 40 years prior,
Hmm.
a B-25 bomber went down. Literally within
ah,
Oh my God.
before
40
we,
to
yeah.
100 feet from that.
What a
What a
segue.
seg! What a
Now
segue!
we are going to get to that bomber. That is a heck of a segue. That is a heck of a
I just
segue.
realized that. I just realized that that happened
It's
right
right there.
beside there. It
Yeah.
That's
happened. The
brilliant.
crash
That's
happened right there.
brilliant. But before we get to the bomber, before we get to the bomber, but still, while we're talking about the rivers, there's one more concert. And it's not about so much the Kinks playing the concert. It is about, it was the Pittsburgh River Regatta. And something
Uh,
really magical happened that year's River Regatta. I think it was 2001. Brendan, I want to see Bond's face as you reveal this
Yeah, I've been going through
fantastic story.
archived newspaper trying to
yeah.
find weird stories like this that not many people talk about.
Yeah.
And in the middle, I think it was in the middle of the Kinks set list, the Regatta's fireworks display starts going off. And so Ray Davies, the,
Yeah.
co-frontman, he gets furious. He's like backstage or something. He kicks a table. He kicks something, breaks his toes. And he comes out and he makes up a song on the spot called like Regatta My Ass or something like that. I can't find any. Again, this is another thing where I can't find a single like bootleg live video or something. But there are a couple like Facebook posts about people saying that they were
Like
there
it
for this or
happened.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
God,
Waterloo
This is great because
Sunset
when
to
you told
Regatta
it
My Ass.
that's so funny. Like,
when you told me the story originally, I just had this I didn't know he was backstage potentially. So I just had this vision of them playing the song, it being disrupted by all these fireworks, and him being so mad that he kicks something and breaks his toes and is like shouting at the audience, like, why are you making me do that? Why are you making me hurt myself or something? I don't know. But I found that brilliant. So
that's
that is just
so this is an area of high strangeness that we're really talking about.
Oh yeah.
That's wild. That's wild. Like,
so
oh,
now
okay.
I've ruined the perfect segue. So I'm gonna
No,
mute
that was
myself for a little bit. I'm gonna give it over to you, Brendan. The bomber.
Oh no, you don't have to remove yourself at all. There's no segues. This I prefer it to be back and forth because so anyway, 1956, January 31st, freezing. Dude's flying the plane from Nevada to Harrisburg with a few spots refueling along the way. Something happens along the way near Pittsburgh where he just runs out of fuel. What he was trying to go to was the Pittsburgh airport at the time. And I don't know if y'all ever looked up pictures or do you know anything about what the Pittsburgh airport was like before the current airport?
I can say yes only because when we first came to Pittsburgh, that would have been in 1990, and I think it was still the old airport, and that was out more towards Monroeville, if I'm not mistaken.
So there's two, right? There's the county airport, which is the one you're thinking of,
Hmm.
Okay.
and then there's the international airport, which
Right.
was like redone, I think, in 1991, and also in the past like month. But before it was redone, I never thought about what it looked like. I know nothing about it.
Hmm.
It was huge. It was like 7 stories tall. I looked up pictures of it. It looked like Century 3 Mall. It was like massive.
Hmm.
So this plane was heading there. So it's heading towards there. It's made a couple stops along the country. It's stopped in Texas. It's stopped in, I think it was Indiana. I can't remember the other place. It starts running out of fuel above the Monongahela, right above the Homestead High Level Bridge, now the Homestead Grays Bridge. And this is in the middle of middle of rush hour, right? People are like
Like four
stopped and they're
o'clock.
like, what the yeah, yeah, yeah. They're like looking
Hmm.
up. It's like 30 feet above their head or whatever. It like coasts across and then slams into the river, right outside of where Guar would be playing 40 years later, right? Um,
Wow.
so it's right. That's when you think about it, life's funny. Some people, it's freezing water. The everybody from the high level bridge, everybody from the Grays Bridge is all staring like, whoa, what's going on? And it just like floats down the bend of the river. If you know the geography there, the river kind of bends and it goes to the Glenwood Bridge in Hazelwood, and it starts sinking near the Glenwood Bridge, and then it rests at supposedly at the bottom of the river near Page's Dairy Mart. If y'all have ever been to Page's Dairy Mart,
I
it's
have
Hmm.
not.
oh, it's good. Yeah, Brendan, what it was? We saying Bond? Is that what it is?
Bond, yeah, yeah.
Okay, you've been to Page's?
Hmm. It's been a few years, but I've been there with my cousins and everything a few times. It's a kind of a Pittsburgh staple in that area. So
Yeah, there's always a line for like 45 minutes
always,
going around the
yeah.
building. There might
Stuff's
have been
good
that
though.
day. There might have
Yeah.
been that day. That it
Hmm.
was open. It was open.
Hmm.
It'd been open for 4 years, but Pages is that old
Is it
that
that
it's been.
old? Oh, see, I didn't realize.
That's
I knew it
yeah,
was old, but I didn't realize it was that old. Jeez. Okay.
yeah. So it's
Check it out.
Wow, I
1956.
really like
Pages
how
been
we're
open.
tying this.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
really like how we're tying this. Not only is the ice cream place still there, but 40 years later, Guar potentially had a tribute song made specially for the occasion. We don't have any evidence that they didn't. So until we find that out for sure, we're going to assume one of them was dressed like a plane and like jumped into one of the water amusements at
There may have
Sandcastle
yeah there
as
may
a
have been
touching tribute.
let's say there may have been an effigy of Major William Dodson, the pilot. So you never know.
they might have been in line. They might have
Yeah.
been in line in that 45-minute line in Pages in
My
costume.
gosh.
I didn't know about. So I was mentioning this earlier. I didn't know
Mhm.
that like I went down a lot of rabbit holes
Yeah,
for this
yeah.
when I was looking at all this. I'm like, 1 year prior, a B-25 crashed into the Empire State Building. A bunch of people died. It landed on the street. It was
Really?
like 70 stories up in the air, and
I had no
an
idea.
elevator operator actually took like the elevator crashed from the 70th floor to the sub basement, and she lived. Like she was like
Wow.
more or less fine. She like broke her back or something, which is not fine, but
No.
like for a
Right.
70 story
But
70 story
all
drop,
things
that's
considering, it's fine.
The
Yeah.
only reason I knew about that is because with all the 9/11 stuff, and there were a lot of conspiracies that came out,
Hmm.
and part of me at the time was like, I don't know about the official report, but that's probably way closer to what actually happened. But now, of course, a lot of things have been rocked. But I just remember learning about that back then because people were like, well, how come that didn't happen when that bomber hit the Empire State Building?
mm,
Oh,
And I
yep.
was like,
interesting.
"What? What are you talking
Yeah,
about?"
like
So that's the only reason like I was aware of that, but
yeah, I
I
never
didn't
heard
hear
that.
the elevator story. That's pretty crazy too.
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
assuming like the descent was staggered, you know. But
Maybe.
Yeah.
yeah.
It could have been just straight. I have no idea. Anyway, so the B-25 sinks
Hmm.
near Page's Dairy Mart, right?
Hmm.
People are getting off. They're holding on to logs. A couple people. I mean, I think there were six people online, and a couple online on the plane. Six people online
There were
and two
six.
people disconnected.
Yeah.
Uh, four people were able to make it out and like to supposedly
Yeah.
and to passed away to the icy waters in
Hmm.
Hazelwood. So okay, sorry, I'm like I have like a bunch of notes to I'm like,
No,
here
all good. No,
I'll
but
pause for a second.
yeah, no, all good, all good. No, and like I think you could just because you mentioned like the six people, like I want people to remember that we said that because that kind of gets into some of the convoluted parts of the story later and some of the possible conspiracy theories. I don't say conspiracy theories because that sounds a little,
Conspiracy-esque.
yeah, it sounds more nefarious, but it's some of it. There are people who think that there were seven or eight passengers,
Right. There's a
possibly.
lot of
Yeah.
questions
There's a lot of
about
questions about the number
just
of
like the
passengers.
9/11 thing. There's like a
Right,
lot of questions like here's what happened. Here's the facts that are generally agreed upon.
right,
And then there's a bunch of other questions. And so there's an official story,
right.
but that isn't satisfying because
It's
there's all
not.
these questions that still
Right,
stand.
right,
And
and yeah.
let's come back to that later.
Right.
Go on.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Air Force report says that there was a Coast Guard cutter
Hmm.
that dragged a 350-pound anchor near that Beck's Run Road, which is, that
Hmm.
area. Snagged something that seemed like a plane's wing, hauled it to the surface, but then it snapped. Plane
Mm-hmm.
sank. The anchor hooked again. Tow line snapped this time.
Mm-hmm.
A third anchor snagged again. It was lost. And so the crew marked the spot with a buoy that just like lit up. And they suspended dragging operations. And they had to get a new anchor from Coriopolis, which took 3 days. And so during that 3 days, you know, some question mark, something
Right.
may have happened. Not sure. So 3 days pass, and then they bring back boats. They start looking, find nothing. Helicopters come, look for oil slicks,
Mm-hmm.
show nothing. The Army Corps of Engineers, I think they did like 150 passes or something like
Yeah.
that, finding absolutely nothing until they were like, this is called off on like
Mm-hmm.
February 14th. Now the B-25's height is like 20 feet or 17 feet or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
16 feet. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
and the Mon's depth at that point is 20 feet. So I don't know how tall you both are. I'm like 5'10". So if I were to stand on the B-25's like on like the top of the B-25 and I'm in the
Mm-hmm.
Mon, like you'd see like it,
Yeah.
from my nipples up, I'd be like just standing in the water, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just going to say a lot of these rivers in the Pittsburgh area, the Monongahela, the Allegheny, and the Ohio, I can't speak much to the Ohio because it's so big, but it's big water, but really
Wide.
it wasn't navigable. Navigable water in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is defined as water with an average depth of at least 8 feet. And
Mm.
the Allegheny, I've heard until the lock and dam system was really constructed, there were times where you could easily wade across the entirety of it. And
Mm-hmm.
I believe the Monongahela is much the same way. So yeah, that's yeah, nipple high on you're standing on a B-25 bomber. It sounds that, appropriate.
Yeah, so it's 16 foot. So I caught most of that, but like you said, it's navigable if it's more than 8 feet.
I'm an idiot. Leave that there. Um, It's my understanding from some books I've read that navigable water is defined state by state. I don't know how accurate that is, and it's not really super pertinent. Other than to say, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, navigable is defined by a body of water which has a depth of at least 8 feet on average. So that doesn't sound crazy deep when people are thinking what is navigable for boats and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And again, before the lock and dam system, I know the Allegheny and the Monongahela, but the Allegheny in particular, it's not very deep by and large. And many times in the year before the lock and dam system, one could very easily just wade across it. Most of the boating that happened prior to the lock and dam was like keel boats and flat bottom boats. And
Mm-hmm.
we talk about back in the lumber days, they would dam up the Allegheny, and I believe the Monongahela as well. They would dam it way up north and just get just an insane amount of water backed up, and then they would break that dam and essentially ride that
Mm-hmm.
into the cities and into the log mills. So I don't know why I went on that rant, but the bottom line is, yeah, theoretically, you're 5'10". I'm between 5'10" and 5'11", so 5'10" and a half. You could stand on that bomber theoretically and be above water. You'd be able to
Yeah.
breathe.
And I think in the idea is we're trying to say that you shouldn't be able to lose a B-52 bomber in 20 feet of water.
Right. Even if a
Yeah.
couple guys are lost in the water,
Right.
that's understandable, but
Mm-hmm.
right. And you wouldn't think the current could carry a plane that far that quick.
Right. So outside of the depth, like it's the width of that area, it's like 900 feet, which is like kind of wide. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a river expert. That might be very wide. I'm not sure, but it definitely 16 foot deep does not seem that or I'm sorry, a 20 foot deep doesn't seem like it would be that hard to lose a 16 foot tall bomber that's like 20 or how long is the wingspan? Like
It's
67
like 60,
feet
60 some
wide
feet.
or
Yeah,
something.
they're not
Yeah.
small. I mean, they're not. It's not like a 747, but it's a big plane. I mean, that thing's probably what, 30,000 pounds? Like it's not small.
Yeah, it
Right.
takes up like 1/11th of the width of the river.
Right.
Um, yeah, so well, okay, so rewinding for a second, it sinks there. They supposedly maybe find it. The anchors keep snagging on something. They put the lighted buoy there. Come back once they get this special anchor from Coriopolis, and they try to search it. They go through 150 passes. Helicopters come by. No one can find anything at all. According to the Air Force, the plane is still there somewhere. However, according to eyewitnesses on either bank of the river, the plane was removed, supposedly, maybe even in the dead of night. So 25 years after all of this, the person who led the search for the army said that something shady had to have happened. When they started their search, they were told by the government to be very careful, and they had to use, or they were using a clamshell bucket. I don't know what that means to scoop the plane up. I'm assuming it just means it like closes. And the government told them they received a call, and they said never close the bucket because it could damage instruments, quote unquote.
Yeah. I want to interject real quick and just say two things. I have always heard that the rumor was that the plane was recovered at night. However,
Hmm.
that's a huge operation. It's really difficult for me to imagine that they could muster that response so quickly and to be able to have it out. But that has always been the rumor. The other thing I'll say is that this incident has always reminded me so much in the way of response of the Kecksburg incident. And for similar reasons that I think you're about to touch on, so I'll leave that there.
Well, I'm going to touch on something that we were talking about earlier. One of the things that I watched before jumping on here was Rick Seebeck made a documentary in '88. It was called the Owl and the O. I've never heard of it called the Owl. So he
Interesting.
had
Yeah, I never heard that either.
kind of weird. So he had an interview with the driver of the Gateway Clipper, and the driver of the Gateway Clipper was saying that this would not be difficult to find. This would be very easy to find this plane. That they lost the stern wheel off of the Gateway Clipper in the Allegheny before, and they got a hold of a diver, and they found the stern wheel in like a week or something.
And
And if
just
they
real
could
quick,
find that,
the Gateway Clipper is just a paddle, like one of the big wheel boats
yeah.
on the river. It's just an icon in Pittsburgh, and Rick Seaback is the documentarian of the Pittsburgh region. So to find one of those wheels, which is considerably smaller,
Yeah. So like that same person, that captain of the Gateway Clipper, he was just saying that the plane was taken out the same night. That he's talked to a lot of people, who were along the riverbank and other boat captains and people like that all kind of agree with this kind of theory. There was also a truck driver who called into KDK's radio show in the 1970s, claiming to
Hmm.
be hired by the CIA to haul a portion of the plane. So and this is something that Bond was, I think, mentioned earlier, is that there's a lot of different conspiracies. People mentioned that maybe there was some, since it was coming from Nevada, the plane, the
Hmm.
B-25, maybe there were some like Vegas showgirls that the people on the plane were like taken back or something. I personally, I think that that's kind of like a weak conspiracy. Like, I think that's kind of a weak one. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know about that. But the other things to kind of like think about during this time is that it was 1956. It's like, Cold War era.
Right.
The Warsaw Pact just happened months prior to this. The US is obsessed with stopping anything communist related. So there's a lot of conspiracy that there was something nuclear on the plane,
Hmm.
or maybe like some nerve gas or germ warfare. I was seeing a bunch of different stuff, but
Right.
um, the one thing I will say is that I think there's been seven other plane crashes into those rivers, and almost all of them have been pulled out 24 hours after the plane crash happened.
Hmm.
And this is it's very interesting that this one just disappeared entirely.
Right. And I think one of and you may be getting to this still, did you come across in your research the reference to like what the researchers back in 95 call the pit at all?
Oh, I'm not sure if I did.
So there was a group in 1995. Let me find their name. Their name is
Is this
really
the Bob Shima and Matt Punzak, the B-25 something like
Yeah,
Cinex.com?
B-25 Recovery Group
Yeah.
was their, yeah, which is a very on the nose name. But well, apparently what they did is they used like side scan sonar along with the Army Corps of Engineers. So it was like a legit like they were actually doing real
The
research.
same side scan sonar that they've used to try to find a
Right,
Loch
Loch
Ness
Ness.
monster,
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
remind you.
I've only heard side scan sonar used to find cool things. So, as far as, but what they did find is there was I guess earlier in the 50s, J&L Steel at one area below the Glenfield Bridge dug out this huge area. I guess it's like 250 feet long and 40 to 50 feet deep because they were pulling stuff out to help build something. It was like dredging. And I guess this group was convinced, like, oh, that's definitely where the plane is. And they didn't find anything, even in that 40-foot thing. Now, their excuse was that the plane has like deteriorated since then, so that's why they can't see it. Which, like, again, I'm not a hydrologist, but I feel like you'd still be able to find the plane in fresh water. You
I'm
know?
gonna say
Yeah.
because it's fresh water.
Right.
What is the tier? I'm
Well,
sure
they
it's
were
not
they
in the
were
best.
saying I
Yeah,
think
go
that they
for
were
it.
saying this like years after the crash, like not even
Oh,
in the
really?
90s. I think they were saying because they said that there was so much pollution in the 50s and 60s, especially in that river, that the aluminum hull or whatever of the plane would be deteriorated. But I also find that
Yeah.
like very hard to believe,
Yeah.
especially like how soon they started saying that.
That's a good point. Yeah. One of the things that I thought was interesting about when that same group was doing that expedition was turns out that like we've actually lost they were saying like, oh, look, we've lost barges in this river and everything. And it's like, yeah, we have, but like no one looks for them. Like they're like, oh, is it there? Nope. Okay, the heck with it. Because if it doesn't have fuel on it or something that is like EPA regulated, they just kind of leave stuff, unfortunately. So yeah, so that 1995 recovery group, I'm glad did some work on it, but it's interesting from like again a conspiracy theory standpoint, where it's like why would the government not want people to know, even like other government entities like the Army Corps of Engineers or the Coast Guard or the Pittsburgh Police, like why not tell anybody that they got the plane out and let people keep looking for it?
Well, one of the things I'll say to that, and this is what bewilders me, and I guess
Hmm.
it's in agreement with you, is that again, so many people claim to have seen them taking bits of the plane away. Again, that seems like a really fast response if they did all that within 3 days. I suppose it could be done. I don't know. Maybe it's easier than we realize. Maybe they had a dive team go down, and maybe it's like, there's
Yeah,
heavy recovery
right,
vehicle sort of things, and they were able to pull it out somehow, some way.
right.
I don't know. Especially if it was already marked for them, that's half the battle right there, I figure. But why wouldn't to your point, why wouldn't they just an army spokesperson or go, yes, this was one of our planes. Unfortunately, a couple people passed away. We'll come back to that in a second. We were able to recover the plane. We didn't want to bring any other groups into this. It's an army problem. We're taking care of it ourselves. It's out of the water. There should be no more impact to the local rivers, and that's that. And that would quell so much of the mystery. I That seems to make sense to me. Even if there's like a early nuclear instrument on board or whatnot, especially then, like let's hide it out in the open by doing something like that.
Well, this is you mentioned the how many people were on board kind of a thing, and the something to always kind of think about for all this stuff is eyewitness testimony, right?
Hmm.
People who were on either side of the river said that they saw like seven bodies be pulled out, or like actually six people were alive, etc. And another thing that people said was that, 3 days later, when they used helicopters to look for the oil slicks, they said that they saw a Geiger counter being suspended off of the helicopter. Um,
I never heard that.
I,
That's fascinating.
yeah, that's something that I saw in this comic by Jim Rugg, Pittsburgh artist, and that's something that I also doubt because it's sort of like, do these people know what a Geiger counter looks like, let alone something that they would hang from a helicopter?
Helicopter, like from a
You
distance.
know,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Right. Is
That
that the
that could have been
most
any. That
efficient
could
way of taking a reading?
Yeah.
Right, right, exactly. But another interesting thing, I was going to mention this earlier. I lost my train of thought, but six of seven planes that have gone down in the rivers have all been found. And quickly. I only really know about one of them. It was a what was it? A Douglas DC-3C. I'm not a plane guy. It seems like it's a little bit bigger than a B-25.
Hmm.
It crashed about a half mile south of West Mifflin. It killed like 20 or 10 of the 28 people on board.
Wow.
So it's a little bit bigger. Also, like army thing, I think.
Hmm.
Um, you could find the what is it called? You could find like the document, the official report.
Hmm.
It's in like black and white, high contrast, right?
Right.
Of that, and it's all it's all plain text. It's all very easy to read. You could also do that for this B-25, and it looks like it's
Hmm.
part of the Epstein files. It's like
Right. It's so
half of it is
redacted.
blacked out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
if you've seen it.
Hmm.
It's at the Heinz History Center. The Heinz History Center, they apparently have like a whole section there
Hmm.
dedicated to the B-25 Ghost Bomber, is what they call it.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think that this is there as well.
Yeah. No, it's really cool. And like one of the things that I think makes this one like fascinating is usually when you people hear about the ghost bomber and you people start talking about it, they think like, oh, well, like, did this plane ever exist? And it's like, no, like we are like we know who was on the plane in theory. We know its, tail number. Like it definitely went like this definitely happened. Like that's not the question. It's what happened afterwards. It's
Well, and I got to say,
so
I'm
so
looking at
mysterious.
this. Thank you, Brendan, for sharing that link. I had not seen this before,
Hmm.
so I'm looking at this for the first time. I'm going to have to come back to this. But yeah, you are right. History of Flight B-25, number 44-29125, departed
Hmm.
US Air Force Base, Nevada on 30th January 1956. So yeah, it's not no question that the plane was real and
Hmm.
that it crashed in Pittsburgh. It's everything about the recovery is what's in question and what was potentially on it that makes so much mystery around the recovery.
Yeah, I could say that I'm firmly in the camp of like some government entity took it out overnight. It seems like that's like all of the experts in areas of which I am not an expert in, including like I mean, including every single part of this this episode,
Yeah.
like ship captains, plane captains, army colonel, like
Yeah.
Oh,
everyone
ice cream though.
who,
Ice cream though, I think you're
yeah, Odorous Maximus. Like
Right.
everyone agrees that this would have been very easy to find, and seemingly they did find it like the
Hmm.
night that it happened. It's just like how could so much there's so much
Hmm.
talk that like maybe all like the anchors and such have like created such a divot or however you want to say it that the
Hmm.
plane kind of like sifted. And I think I even saw in some documentary that it's possible that like the plane is meant now potentially under 20 foot of like dirt and sand and stuff
Hmm.
underneath the river. I feel like it's possible, but I think it's much more
Totally.
likely that that thing was gone. 150 passes by the army and they couldn't find it. I mean, yeah.
Right. And those
See,
people,
here's
sorry.
why it reminds me so much of, and I'm sorry to
Oh, no,
have
no, no, you're good.
interrupted you,
You're good.
Bond.
You're
It's
good.
just a little delay. But this is real quick. This is one of the reasons why it makes me think so much of Kecksburg, especially since all the Kecksburg stuff is supposedly declassified now. I believe that it is. And it had everything to do with the Cold War and with not satellites or early satellites. I'm trying to remember what. But had everything to do with that. My belief is And that recovery of that and all the mystery surrounding it, very similar to what we have here, where the recovery is the actions are swift and it happens very quickly. There's a series of eyewitnesses that claim to have seen it, but everybody's kind of the official word is mum. And I can't help but think that it has everything to do with the Cold War. That is the underlying shadow that kind of hangs over us, and particularly in the region from the end of World War II. Well, I think the Warsaw Compact is exactly right until really perestroika and the whole shock doctrine era. And I'll leave that there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Nick. And I think I'm generally in agreement as well. I know a lot in this podcast we talk about like, the Occam's razor for certain things. And this is one of the occasions where I think the Occam's razor is probably that the government, again, came in really efficiently and got this plane and got it out of there. Now, I think one of the reasons that is kind of hard for some people to buy is, again, one, they're not used to the government being really efficient with these kinds of things, because it isn't always, obviously. But if there was a reason for this to be falling under any protocol for any of that Cold War stuff, they're going to respond quickly. And we have enough Air Force bases around here. Heck, at the time, we had the Nike missile thing down in Oakdale, so like this wasn't like an unknown area. So the government efficiency is a little weird. And the thing I think for me that fuels a lot of conspiracy theory stuff that we were kind of talking about, Brendan, is like the manifest not being accurate. And some of the logs for the flight when it was going from like Nevada to Oklahoma to Michigan to, Maryland says, I think it was in Maryland, they said they needed to stop for like brake repairs or something, but then no repair was ever logged. So like there's enough inconsistencies in paperwork that like make it seem kind of shady, considering, both the pilots were, veteran pilots. Like there wasn't like this was a new thing for them. So I think for some people it sounds easier to think that like, oh, there had to have been something shady rather than like this is just a normal thing. Like paperwork in the 50s wasn't any easier,
Right.
which isn't sexy, but it's probably true.
Right. I think it's most plausible that someone, and the someone could only be the government, took the plane in those 3 days. 3 days is a long time, right? If it
Hmm.
wasn't like that, like you could say like it happened the night of, and like you could say, oh, the government was very efficient. I, I, I for one believe that the government can be very efficient whenever the needs serve capital, and like this is. Very likely that the needs served capital and the needs served fighting, whatever they need to fight, and they could, if not pull it out that night, pull it out the next night, or even the night after, or a combination of one of
Right,
those things.
right.
But yeah, if I think that it's still a very interesting conspiracy in the sense of like, why did the plane run out of fuel? Like, did they pick something up in one of the places that they were stopping along the way? What did they pick
Right.
up? You know?
Right. I've heard people mention that where if they picked up something, especially either in Nevada or in Oklahoma that had some of the germ warfare stuff like you mentioned, if they didn't calculate that or someone didn't calculate it properly because they took on a few extra 100 pounds or something like that, that would have resulted in that. I mean, granted, it could have been a mechanical error, but again, they were in contact with the different towers in the area previously. Like they hit the Butler beacon and they were going towards the New Alexandria beacon, like you said, whenever they turned around. So it wasn't like they were flying below the radar and trying to be shady, But they have all these elements after the fact that sure look shady to people.
Well, that's one of my questions right there is how certain are we that it was when they are in contact and they're communicating, are they saying they're running out of fuel at that time?
Yeah,
I
I
think they
think
mentioned
even
that.
yeah, Brandon, yeah, I think you're
Well,
right.
you,
I
you
think
did mention that they ran out of fuel. That was just, but I didn't know if that was something that they were saying because it seems like for as efficient as things could be, that they would know how far to get to a refueling station. You did say they were looking for the Pittsburgh airport or they
Yeah,
were
sorry.
supposed to be there.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't say I think I mentioned that. I think they mentioned that. Like I
Oh,
think they
okay.
mentioned that.
Sorry.
I think they did mention that in like the transmission. I think they said, "Hey, we're running out of fuel. What do we do?" Or like whatever. I don't have it on me, but I think I did see that.
Okay. Yeah, because that was one of my questions. If they had communicated that, I would have no reason not to believe that was so. Other than again, I wouldn't think that they would only have just enough fuel to make it, especially if there's something so important that has bred conspiracies that had motivated the army to respond so quickly for recovery, which I think we're all in agreement is what had most likely happened. It just seems like why would they be such a loss of fuel unless there maybe was something mechanical going on that corresponded to that. So again, I think we're all kind of on the same page in our believing. What are some of the other like conspiracies or what happened? I mean, you've already talked about like silt and sediment has buried some of the plane after the impact into the soil. Some people claim that it's just so deteriorated after all this time, there's not much left. I have heard claims that the current had shifted it greatly from where it was. Again, I have a hard time believing that based on, again, the average depth of the water. Something of that size and weight, it's going to get caught up on something, especially again in the wake of you cite seven other planes that had been found in this river. So
Fairly quickly too, right? It doesn't, and it shouldn't take that long to find some of these massive planes in these rivers. Like we mentioned, it's like the wingspan is like one eleventh of the river, and the height is like three-fourths. You know,
well, in the cutter, the fact that they had snagged, they were pretty confident they had snagged onto it three different occasions that first day they had that buoy, even if it traveled, and that's definitely reasonable. I can't imagine it could go that far in such
right?
short time.
Yeah, that's why for me at least, as far as all of these conspiracy goes, it definitely shifts from like where is it to why did they remove it? And I've seen like a lot of thing like I've seen a lot of different conspiracies that I would just like ignore entirely, but like they could be interesting. Like there is like aliens, like maybe there was an alien on the plane. People mentioned Howard Hughes. I'm going to be honest, I know nothing about Howard Hughes. I probably should know something about Howard Hughes.
I know
That
like
seems
the
improbable.
toenails. I know Howard Hughes mostly from the movies that he helped get off the ground and
Yeah.
movies about Howard Hughes. But I don't know if he would have had anything to do with this. I'm really curious about what the Howard Hughes connection supposedly is.
I've read that he has a history of airplane incidents. I don't know. I
That
know
is
nothing about
true.
this.
He had the Spruce Goose, which was a plane. I believe it took off twice. It was an all wooden plane, but it was one of those big planes that would come into the and land in the water and everything. I am gonna stop there because I'm sure I'm gonna say a lot of inaccurate things beyond that. But it was something of a folly that he was able to get in the air a few times, a couple times maybe.
Yeah. After Howard Hughes, that's where you start seeing like probably more reasonable things, like just like kind of in just some kind of intel, some kind of intelligence on there. I don't think that I don't maybe the Vegas Showgirls thing has some holds some water. I don't know. And then the nuclear potential weaponry stuff, which like I'm still kind of I don't know. You know, I think that those are the more interesting. Or Bigfoot could have been on there. And I think we
Bigfoot definitely
mentioned
was
him.
on there.
He could have. What might have happened is there might be a decoy plane in that river right now, and Bigfoot
Mm,
might be on the plane, and he might have landed that plane. We
Well,
don't know.
what I heard, and they had picked Bigfoot up, and then he took the wheel, and of course Bigfoot can't
Yep.
fly. Real quick, I had to look it up. The Spruce Goose was the Hughes H-4 Hercules. It was the world's largest aircraft at that time, 1947. It was a giant wooden boat that could land in the water and everything, and it only flew once, and it was mostly constructed from birch.
Why
And
did it
that was
only
a
fly once? What happened? Like, is that a different way to say
I it had a 320-foot wingspan.
wow? So again, this
Yeah,
the B-25 is a 67-foot wingspan.
there you go.
Wow.
There you go.
I didn't go
That
to
puts
school
it
for
into
math, but I
perspective.
think that's 1,000 times bigger.
And I also think it was probably pushing I saw something about shipbuilding and how large you could physically build a wooden ship, and it's not that big. I mean, it's plenty big. It's sufficient, but you couldn't like build a wooden Titanic. I imagine that the Spruce Goose was pushing the limits of what was capable of being done with bold new advances in birch.
Oh my
That's
God.
crazy. That's wild. And speaking of Titanic, I actually thought about the Titanic earlier today because when looking up like how cold was that water in the
Hmm.
Monongahela, it was like 6 degrees warmer than the waters around the Titanic with the people who, drowned there. So it was pretty cold. I mean, 6 degrees
Hmm.
warmer is warmer, but that's still pretty cold. So yeah,
Right.
2 people did freeze to death there.
Ugh, yeah.
And as you
No,
know, like water temperature and air temperature are very different things the way our body responds to it.
cold water it doesn't take much to kill you in cold water. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, it's, you know what? Like I said, we had mentioned this before. This was one of those stories, and I think Dr. Thomas White has it on the cover of one of his books, but it's one of those stories that I'm amazed that more people don't talk about because I had lived in the Pittsburgh region, I want to
Hmm.
say, for 10 to 15 years before I had ever heard of again, the popularly known as the Ghost Bomber.
Yeah, I grew up in Homestead, which is
Hmm.
where the
Right.
plane, landed on the river right after the high level bridge or whatever. Like, I spent 18 years around that area, and I still currently live in Greenfield, which is right beside the rough landing. So yeah, no, I also never heard of it until just like a year ago, or maybe less. I mentioned this earlier. Jim Rugg, he was part of a duo, Jim Rugg and Ed Piskor. They're both Pittsburgh independent comic makers that have a YouTube called Cartoonist Kayfabe, where they kind of would break down comics and what makes them work and what makes
Oh,
them good.
interesting.
And he made a whole comic about the Ghost Bomber. And it's great. It's very good. It's like only 8 pages long, and it's enough to satiate some of your curiosity and kind of get you going on that path. But yeah, I don't know how many people really know about it these days.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things like you kind of both kind of are talking about. It should be a bigger deal. The fact that we don't have a minor league any team called the Pittsburgh Ghost Bombers is a real shame. I'd love a hockey jersey that says the Ghost Bombers on it
I
for
once
Pittsburgh.
played a show at the now gone 31st Street Pub with
RIP.
a group called Monongahela Monster, which should be explored what the Monongahela Monster was all about, but not the Monongahela Bomber. So
Right.
again, lots of opportunities to capitalize upon, but it really is a fascinating story, and it's if it weren't for the fact that it's not like a particularly sexy plane at that. It's not like a stealth bomber crashed. It's not like, well,
Right.
it's thought that the this aircraft was of alien origin of
Or
itself.
experimental or anything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. If it were all those things, I mean, again, Kecksburg overshadows it, but I can't help but think that Kecksburg and this B-25 are very similar stories. And in fact, tomorrow I am going to the shop. I have a full load of students, but the owner of the shop is very much a plane guy, and I'm
Oh,
gonna have
really?
to ask him about, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Josh, who you still got to
Yeah.
pick your amp up,
Hmm.
by the way.
I do. I do.
He if you stop by tomorrow, you'll have to ask him about B-20 because the guy that owns the music shop again worked at an airport. His brother's a pilot. His another brother worked on airplanes, still does, I think. Um, very knowledgeable about planes and very interesting to talk to about them. Yeah.
I'd be curious to know if there's any like plain person lore about it that was like exists in their little community.
Well, that's exactly what I'm wondering, or
Hmm.
if he's heard from other people that
Yeah.
like worked at the airport back because if I'm remembering correctly, like his parents had a lot to do with a couple regional airports, but
Hmm.
that's on here. I'm curious to learn. Yeah, what are What are some of the stories that pass around those people? Because I know I've spoken to him about a few different plane crashes in the immediate area,
Hmm.
and he like knew the people,
Right.
or was one of the first responders. He's been the first responder in a couple airplane crashes,
Oh,
which
wow.
is pretty wild too. Yeah.
Definitely report back. I want to hear that. I think that pilots and I think all of that kind of vein of I think that kind of profession has very interesting drama and lore.
Hmm.
For some reason, Reddit has been they've been the algorithm of Reddit's algorithm has been like showing me random subreddits for the past like half year, and it's been pitching me air traffic control 2, air traffic control, and then the number 2.
Oh, wow.
Meaning there was so much drama on the air traffic control subreddit that they had
Right.
to make a second subreddit. And now there are 2 air traffic control subreddits. And I have been going to each one. I don't care about air traffic control. I don't care about anything with
You're
aviation
not
that
looking to a
much.
future in it.
Yeah.
Right. But there's some good stories with this kind of stuff, you know?
I have no doubt. I have no doubt it's super stressful. I know we've all, in the general public, have learned something of what the air traffic controllers are
Hmm.
having to deal with regard to their technologies and everything.
Hmm.
Essentially, still being in many ways trapped in the late 1950s, or they're having for their computers having to buy parts off eBay because, but that's neither here nor there. I'm really curious. Do we know anything of the crew that survived this? What did they go on to do? How were they ever interviewed about this in the public?
It's a great question, Nick. I've never been able to find anything like that. Brendan, did you come across anything? Because
You
I think
know
that's a great
what?
question.
I did not. I didn't find anything. I think that all these people are long since passed away,
Right.
but that would be interesting to like look up and to see.
And I think that, like, again, the conspiracy theory part of me is like, oh, well, if all these people worked for in theory, all these people probably were government employees at the time, and there not being anything out there of them talking about it kind of makes sense because you would imagine that whether or not there was anything shady about it or not, their superiors were probably just like, don't talk to the press. Just don't, which again, you can imagine how a reasonable person would say that.
I think the best thing though that we should all be thankful didn't happen is that this plane didn't go down during the Kinks set. Because could you imagine how upset Ray Davies would have been?
How many
What
more
would the
bones?
song be?
Oh my God. Yeah, no, it's just a wild story and a big part of Pittsburgh history and Pittsburgh lore. And I'm glad that it's starting to slowly get more and more traction, like you mentioned, Brian, with the Heinz History Center article or display, and obviously Thomas White's work.
Right. Now, if you were at Sandcastle in June of 1997, or at the Three Rivers, Pittsburgh Three Rivers Regatta for the Kinks set in 2001, how can people reach out to tell us what they saw? Tell us their stories.
You can reach out to us either on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube at the Ghost Furnace Podcast, or you can send us an email at theghostfurnacepodcast@gmail.com.
Please, if you were at that Guar show, or if you know anyone who was at the Guar show, or if like you even heard of this Guar show, I want to make sure it happened. I'm kind of worried that it didn't. I'm kind of worried that the Post Gazette ran these ads in '97 and then
It
Guar
got pulled.
canceled and we would have never
Mhm.
known.
Or that somebody at Sandcastle Management came to their senses and was like, "Wait, we're hosting who now?"
I can just imagine that's either like the best or worst day of someone's job. Like it's either going to be one or the other. Like a lot of wonderful things. But yeah, no, yeah. Please reach out, and let us know. But and we'll make sure to let you know, Brendan, if we hear anything. And again, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us this evening. Hopefully,
Yeah,
hopefully not the last time we'll have you on.
yeah. Thanks for having me.